Today, we are answering the question, are psychedelics a key to higher consciousness? Because we talk a lot about higher consciousness on my channel. It's a very large focus. And people are always asking me, how do you achieve a higher consciousness? What's the best way to achieve a higher consciousness? And today we're specifically taking a look at psychedelics to see if they could facilitate that. Now, I want to say right off the bat, remember, don't do anything dangerous, don't do anything illegal, and never feel pressured to. These things are not necessary. Now, that being said, we're going to take a look at them. I was reading this article the other day about new research, a new study that was talking very close to what we're talking about tonight, which is about psychedelics as a key to altering the mind, altering consciousness to reach a higher level. And I was reading this and I was just, I have to do a video about this because it was just so cool. I love seeing when stuff in modern society and modern culture begins to really coincide with what we talk about, because humanity is developing and they're ultimately going to come to these conclusions. It just takes a little while. So we're talking about psychedelics here, and there's so much to talk about, especially what psychedelics are, what they do, and how it relates. But I want to start off the bat by taking a look at this. Again, I said this article is really interesting, called "Can Taking Psychedelics Alter Our Core Beliefs?" Now, this was published on technologynetworks.com. And here's the interesting thing. Check this out. Johns Hopkins medicine researchers continue their exploration into psychedelics and how these drugs may produce a wide range of profound changes in perception, cognition, and mood. In a recent study published on November 1st in the Journal of Psychopharmacology, experts from the Johns Hopkins Center of Psychedelic and Consciousness Research explored belief changes related to psychedelic experiences. Belief changes. They found that a single psychedelic experience increased a range of non-physicalist beliefs, as well as beliefs about consciousness, meaning, and purpose. Further, the magnitude of belief changes was associated with qualitative features of the experience. So let's break this down and take a look at this, and then we're going to see the results of this study, because this is so cool. So in this study, they found that a single psychedelic experience, this isn't someone who, this isn't about doing it again and again or all the time. A single psychedelic experience increased a range of non-physicalist beliefs in things that are more than the material domain, that are other than the material domain, that are immaterial, as well as beliefs about consciousness, meaning, and purpose. Now, why is this important, and why does this have to do with reaching a higher consciousness? Because you are expanding your conscious field when you are able to understand that there is more to reality and you push past your limits. You see, if you're limited to the belief that, let's say, that reality is material and only material, your consciousness is going to be circumscribed by this. You're going to be inside that little box, that little circle of your consciousness. Now, when you come to the conclusion that there is more to reality than the material, then you are increasing what you are aware of. Now, the great philosopher Hegel, who is my favorite philosopher, at least one of my favorite philosophers, said that to be aware of your limitations is to already be beyond them. Most people, and what does that mean? To be aware of your limitations is to already be beyond them. This is a really important quote. And this is an important video, by the way, because there's a lot of mistakes people can make and misunderstandings. So, please understand that. And if you haven't, by the way, hit like and subscribe. It helps some way. I don't know how, but it does. So do it right now. So anyway, I want to mention this quote with regard to Hegel, and then we're going to explore this research more and see what it has to do with all this. So Hegel said, to be aware of your limitations is to already be beyond them. So what does that mean? It means, so imagine someone who is not aware of their limitations. If you are not aware of your limitations, you have no idea that there is a beyond. Imagine someone standing in the middle of their field, all right? Say someone stands in the middle of the field. They build a house in the middle of that field, and they only go, but their entire life, they only go, let's say, 100 feet from the house, and they only explore like a 100-foot radius from the house. Well, that's going to be the entirety of their knowledge, where they live, and the 100-foot radius around their house. Now imagine someone else does so, but they walk and they walk and they walk and they walk, and they find a fence. Now, see, that other person who never walked and who only stood within that 100-foot radius, they're not even going to know there's a fence. They're going to think that they live in, let's say, a limitless field. They aren't aware of their limitations. But a person who walks and realizes, oh, there's a fence, realizes that there is a limitation, and in realizing there is a limitation, realizing that there is a beyond. Oh, there's something over the fence. There's something other than just this field. And so by being aware of your limitations, you're already beyond them by being aware of them. Whereas the person who just stayed in the center of the field has no idea that they're limited, has no idea that there's a beyond. They're just going to stay there. Now, this is like someone who's in a low state of consciousness versus a high state of consciousness. You can get to a higher awareness by exploring the field of your mind, finding those limitations, and then ultimately going beyond those limitations. And one should constantly be on the lookout for their limitations, always. So that means most people are comfortable with their beliefs most people just want to affirm their beliefs all the time. Nobody wants to look at the limitations or what could be wrong about their beliefs. You always want to look out. You always want to be looking out for what might be wrong, what might be an error, what might be a problem in your belief system. Because then you realize you have limitations, you can fix them and go beyond them. You see how it's so the opposite. Most people just want to affirm what they believe and ignore the things that might make them uncomfortable because, oh, well, maybe it's wrong. No, constantly be looking at what's wrong, what's limiting, what might be an error, so you can constantly be expanding. Same thing when you expand and go into that new sense of awareness. Look for what might be limiting you there. So you can see this like in terms of materialism with those who are stuck in materialism, the belief that realities matter and only matter. Most people are not aware that there is something more. And to be aware of the immaterial domain is to go up a level in awareness, to reach a higher level of awareness. Now, remember, there are different gradations of higher awareness. There are different levels. But what I want to talk about specifically with this is that, first of all, this does not mean, first of all, I want to be clear, psychedelics are not necessary, okay? So like I said in the beginning, don't feel pressured. They're not necessary. However, for some people, they can be very powerful tools. Now, for other people, not so much. Other people might, and we'll see in the study, that this applies to a lot of people, but not everyone. You can't just go give everyone a psychedelic and then automatically have an enlightened world. Because it's not the experience itself per se that allows one to have a higher awareness, but it's the understanding and integration of that experience. And that's what's really important. If you have a powerful experience delivered to you by a psychedelic, it is the understanding and the integration of that experience. And the integration just means how to fit it in with what you know or what can be, to fit it in, to deal with. So to understand it and see how it relates to everything else. And that is ultimately what facilitates a higher awareness. The experience gives you the data. The experience gives you the data to be able to then understand and integrate. If you don't understand and integrate, it's just like watching something on TV. It's like, ooh, wow, that was fun. And a lot of people do that where they just do psychedelics and just, ooh, wow, that was trippy. But they don't understand it or integrate it. So it is the understanding and integration that is what is important. The experience is what facilitates a kickstarting of that. Now, this is why when I talk about how does one reach hyper-awareness, which is an extremely advanced state of higher awareness, one requires phenomenological experience, metacognition, and concept networking. The psychedelic portion is just one of those aspects, phenomenological experience, having an experience. But then one must actually understand, reflect on that experience, metacognition, and then concept networking, see how that experience fits in with all the rest of what you know or what can be known about reality, how it fits in with everything. So psychedelics on their own, or just experience on its own in general, not even just psychedelics, but any experience, whether that's on meditation or dreams, lucid dreaming, whatever. Experience alone is not going to do it. One requires the other aspects with understanding and integrating as well. So that being said, we're going to take a look at this study that was done on, let's see, over 2,000 people. Again, this is super cool. And I'll let you know how this really, here, because I want to tell you how this, because this really relates to certain experiences that I have had. So let's just read this a little bit, and then I'll let you know my experiences, because it really fits in with all this very, very well. So it says, for the study, the researchers analyzed data gathered between August 2020 and July 2021 on 2,374 people who had a belief-changing psychedelic experience. Participants averaged 35 years of age and were predominantly male. Almost half of the participants, 43%, indicated that the belief-changing psychedelic experience was their first. Says, for the survey, participants rated how they felt about 45 belief statements from before to after they had the psychedelic experience, as well as the time they filled out the survey. The results of the analysis revealed the beliefs were divided into 5 factors. So these 5 categories were basically they're doing this test, they're getting these people who've done psychedelics, and they're saying, hey, what did you think about these 5 categories before you did the psychedelic? And what did you think about it afterwards, after the first time that you did it? And these 5 categories are: 1, dualism, which they define as a philosophical position that the mind and body are separable. This is a view that many people have intuitively, that the mind and body are separate. Basically, this means that the brain and the mind are not equal, but that the mind is separate from the body. You can think of it almost like the soul as well. Often in philosophy, mind and soul are used interchangeably. It's only when materialist atheistic science really came on the rise that it changed. Rather than the mind being equivalent to the soul, the mind became equivalent to the brain. So you have this substance, which is mind, which is all we know and all we are. Everything you've ever experienced is through your mind. You've never experienced anything that is not facilitated by your mind. It's the thing that you know the most. Your sentient, subjective, conscious experience that you're having right now. Everything you know goes through that, and that's all you've known. And the things that have gone through that. So it's the thing that we know the most. We call this mind. It has been associated with or used interchangeably with the word soul. Your ability to be a sentient individual, a being, was considered soul. But with the rise of materialist science, instead of it being equated to soul, it became equated to the brain. And being equated to the brain, it was no longer an eternal, immaterial substance or structure. Rather than it began to be regarded as simply the result of purely material processes that will be extinguished and gone when you die. So I'm getting a little off track here. The 5 categories was questions about dualism, that mind and body are different and separable, paranormal/spirituality, and this factor covered a range of supernatural/paranormal/spiritual beliefs, including the existence of telepathy, disembodied spirits, and the existence of self after death, communication with the dead, reincarnation, and whether some people can predict the future or move objects with their mind. Now you see, this is they crammed a lot of different things in this category. Reincarnation and existence after death thrown in with like telepathy and moving objects with the mind. That's a pretty wide field of questions. But anyway, this paranormal / spirituality included things like reincarnation, self after death, and also things like communication with the dead and telepathy. 3, non-mammal consciousness refers to whether insects, trees, and rocks are capable of having a conscious experience. And I believe they probably mean sentient experience, but I'm not going to nitpick there. And then mammal consciousness refers to non-mammalian and mammalian consciousness and whether these are capable of having conscious experience, such as cats and sheep. Are cats and sheep capable of having a conscious sentient experience? And then 5, superstition, refers to beliefs that breaking mirrors, the number 13, and black cats bring bad luck, was the 5th category. Now, this is all really important. I'm going to show how it ties into higher awareness and all this and my own experiences, which is very pertinent to this. So, results of the analysis revealed increases in beliefs related to the first 4 factors. In contrast, belief changes for superstition were not as significant. And that's awesome. So, and the reason why that's so cool is because that fits in exactly with what we know. So, if psychedelic experiences are really giving one experiences related to reality that can be integrated to truths about reality, then the first 4 are exactly what would be altered, while the 5th wouldn't. And it's so cool that, because while I was reading this for the first time, I was like, oh yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, that makes perfect sense. But the 5th one, superstition, I don't know about that. And then I kept reading, and that was the one that was not changed. So dualism, the belief that mind and body are separate, spirituality, reincarnation, the existence of self after death, the fact that insects and trees and whatnot can have a sentient experience. They include rocks here, but that's neither here nor there. Mammal consciousness refers to like cats having consciousness experience and sheep having conscious experience. All those were the ones that were altered, and one began to have beliefs about those things. But superstition about like, should you break a mirror or the number 13 or black cats, that didn't change. And that's so cool because that's exactly what wouldn't, because that doesn't have to do, because superstition doesn't have to do with truths of reality. Those are superstitions that humans made up because humans are crazy. So that wouldn't be a thing that one would think would change. And, now I'm not saying that it never could, because when one is in a psychedelic state, you're in a highly suggestible state. You're also in a state that is just desperately looking for connections and meanings. So I could see that would sometimes perhaps be the case, because you're kind of in a very you're in a very jumbled state at the moment. So you can believe a lot of things. So for superstition to happen from time to time wouldn't surprise me, but I wouldn't think that it would be the thing that occurred consistently and with such increased belief, which is all the other ones: dualism, spirituality, consciousness. And the results of the analysis were exactly that the first 4 were significant factors, but belief changes about superstition was not as significant. So, and then this is so cool. So, but real quick, the reason why I want to jump into this and why we can see that psychedelics can be important is, before I started this video, we had the Q&A, live stream Q&A. That's why you should come to the live streams, by the way, not just watch the replays, because there's a Q&A time there's a lot of great questions, today. But someone named Dirtbike Austin said, mushrooms helped me get the push to veganism. And you see how cool that is? Because this individual was not vegan before. And the experience that one had on mushrooms, this individual experience, he then, or she, I don't know, or they then had this experience of that one should be vegan. And I don't know, this was just one sentence, so I don't know their exact experience, but I would probably guess that it had to do with the connectivity of all reality, the consciousness of animals, and the need to decrease unnecessary suffering in the world, because we're all connected and we're all in this together. And so that's a really good example of someone that has used the psychedelic experience in a positive way, in an integrated way, in an understood way, to help build a better world, which is a very cool example. So I thought I'd just mention that real quick. Come to the live streams. So But they continue here with the examples of what some of the beliefs were, right? So examples of increases in non-physical beliefs included increased belief in the following: that the mind is a different kind of existence, a spiritual way of being, that the universe is conscious, that the mind is immaterial and it works with the brain to generate our behavior. See, isn't this so cool? These are so close to the things we talk about all the time. And these are conclusions that people are coming to through the use of these psychedelics. And why does that make so much sense? Because we subscribe to brain filter theory, which means that the brain does not generate the mind, but it filters our mind to be able to exist in a pragmatic way in a localized environment. So it filters out all information that's not necessary to our survival in a localized world. But when that brain filter is lifted, you start getting flooded with the holistic aspects of reality that aren't necessarily needed for survival, but that bring experiences that, understood and integrated, can lead to truths of existence. And what psychedelics do in our framework is lift that filter of the brain, begins to lift that filter of the brain so you're able to get more, or at least alter that filter of the brain so you're able to get connected to that data. And that's another reason why, and I think anyone who has done psychedelics can attribute this. When one lifts the filter of the brain and you start going into that experience, you are experiencing having an experience that is no longer so relevant to the localized world, the physical world, the linear localized physical world. But rather, you're entering into more right brain hemispheric functions rather than left brain hemispheric functions. You're entering into a holistic understanding of reality, meaning understanding reality and the universe as a whole, not just in pieces. We experience reality in pieces because it's necessary for our survival. If I want to pick up this cup of water and drink it, I have to, this is a tiny little piece of reality that I have to compartmentalize and manipulate. It's a very minuscule fraction, but this is required for me to have water and survive. I have to do that. We're in this linear, boxed, compartmentalized world. But what's true is that this cup is not a cup at all. What it really is a structure of frequency that bleeds and is connected into everything else. It is connected to the environment and affects, eventually ripples and affects everything else. So our understanding of reality as a segmented structure is what allows us to manipulate reality in a way to survive. And this was necessary via evolution. But when you enter into that right brain associated functions of understanding reality as a whole interconnected structure, you're beginning to understand and see things. If you integrate and understand it properly, you're having the experience of reality as an integrated, connected whole. That's what holistic means, like a whole is a whole. And I'm sure anyone who's done psychedelics will affirm that when one is in that state, it's very hard to be in the linear state. When you're experiencing reality as an interconnected whole and the absolute and the source, it may be very difficult to pick up this cup of water and drink it. You may even forget what the concept of a cup is, because you're leaving that mode that's so focused on linear human invented concepts for survival and pragmatic means, and are instead lifting the filter to this flood of a connected domain and a collective domain where one is having the experience of connectivity and collective. And not only connectivity and collective, but since those right brain hemispheric functions are really becoming powerful too, like meaning and symbolism, a flood of archetypes, rich archetypes. It's so hard to put into words, but everything just becomes imbued with meaning. One is experiencing symbolic, archetypal. If one has not experienced it, it's difficult to put into words. But it's no longer about pragmatic use value. of like, oh, there is the cup that holds water, and there is the fridge, and there is the books with the words, and there's the this with the that. It's instead holistic structure, symbolic meaning, archetypal patterns, stories, story forms, and like being immersed in a dream. And it makes perfect sense that the brain would filter all that out via evolution to survive. If you're in that dreamy reality that makes it so hard to even just pick up a cup or know what a cup is, a predator is going to eat you because you're going to be busy, not able to work in this linear mode when you're in that holistic non-local mode. So there's just so much to talk about with this stuff. So I'm just looking at my notes because when I get on these rants, I always look at my notes later and go, oh, I wanted to talk about that and I forgot. But I'm looking at my notes to make sure that, okay, yeah. So, but I didn't even finish. So these are continuing examples of what people started to increase their belief in. And again, this is so cool because this is so close to the things that we talk about, and it fits in perfectly. The mind is a different kind of existence, a spiritual way of being, that the universe is conscious, that the mind is immaterial and works with the brain to generate our behavior. Inanimate natural objects, e.g. rocks, are capable of having a conscious experience. Now that I would, well, we don't have time to touch upon that. Let me say that though is a misunderstanding of subjective sentience and just simply being a thought form. But I am so tempted to explain that one, but we don't have time. So I'm going to push past it. Maybe we'll talk about rocks in another video. Rocks, no rocks in this one. But anyway, that there's a hidden or deeper purpose to life and all of existence about which people are unaware. How cool is that? And that there are hidden or deeper meanings to everyday events beyond both simple factual explanations and more complicated scientific explanations for understanding the world. Isn't that so cool? That all these things were the type of things, and silly things like mirrors breaking or the number 13 or black cats, that didn't really, but no, it's these important aspects that one would expect to be the case. Like if one were to write down what would make sense to occur based on what we know about reality and how it works, these would be the things that one would have the belief changes about, because these are all the things that are filtered out, and these are all the things that, and this completely flies in the face of scientific theories about how psychedelics work, which is basically just a messing with brain functions. It does not work this way. And Terence McKenna really nailed this on the head when, I forget what he said exactly, but he said that how science understands how psychedelics works, it should be just a messing with the alteration of the test pattern. But no, you come to higher experiences. And an analogy I think that works with this is kind of like, let's say that a computer program, you're using a computer program, and let's say like that computer program is made of computer code, and let's say taking a drug would be like messing with the code. Well, if you take a drug that just kind of messes with the code, you'd expect it to not work as well. Maybe like the impairment of your motor functions, for example. Like that makes sense. That would make sense in that sort of thing. But the communication of these higher ideas wouldn't make sense. That would be like messing with the code and producing better results. That doesn't, if you're throwing in something that just disrupts the code, you're not going to expect better results. And so if it were to disrupt the code, you wouldn't expect things like all these important philosophical concepts to come flooding in. You'd expect just random shit to happen, like just seeing flashes of random crap, not like beautiful fractal patterns and archetypal symbolism and universal structures. No. You'd expect more like a random a messing with, and sometimes that occurs because you are messing with the brain function, and so you are going to get like motor impairment and sometimes things that don't necessarily mean something. But in addition to that, you get a huge amount of meaningful, purposeful, existential, philosophical content that one can then use. So, oh, and by the way, anyone that says that like psychedelics are not important are just idiots. It's clearly psychedelics are very powerful tools, and if someone doesn't think so, it's ridiculous. So this is a quote here, and I still want to talk about my experience because it fits in with all this. So it says, up to this point, we have under-theorized and under-emphasized psychedelic-induced belief changes. Yeah, no shit. So these results show that, hey, scientists should be paying attention to this. Guardrails against certain belief changes in clinical use are important, but to the extent to which such non-naturalistic beliefs may be therapeutic is unclear. There's much more to learn here. And this is annoying because you see you have these scientific researchers, and what's their point? Their point is kind of like, well, we don't really know what these beliefs, like what therapeutic beliefs these could have. Like, we don't really know what positive therapeutic beliefs these could have. So I don't know this person, and I haven't read everything he said, but from the gist of it, what I get is when people are interested in psychedelics, it's more for therapeutic reasons, like treating depression or anxiety or things like that, which is great. That's fine. But it's ignored the it's like stepping into an entirely new realm and then coming back and the scientists being like, well, what did it do for your depression and anxiety? Ignoring the entire domain that one just experienced. Like that doesn't matter. It's important to see what therapeutic value there is, but there's also so much more as well. And it's funny because it's almost like, again, I don't know this person, but the vibe that I get from this person is that they're kind of saying like, oh yeah, whatever, these beliefs, crazy beliefs, but is it helpful for people to believe this? Does it help, let's say, depression, anxiety? Because if it helps depression and anxiety, maybe it's a good thing. Kind of like, they're taking it to be bullshit, but does it help depression or anxiety or something like that? Which is, and again, I don't know if that is what that person is saying, but I think that is often, because if you look at how psychedelics have been treated, and we're having increasing decriminalization and legalization of psychedelics, such as what we see with marijuana, and then decriminalization of psilocybin, magic mushrooms in Colorado, and different select cities as well. That's starting to happen. It's always for the therapeutic value, which is fine. Medical marijuana and medical psilocybin, that's great. But so much, again, it's like stepping into a whole new dimension and then coming back in the world being like, okay, so how did it help depression and anxiety? Never mind the fact that there's this whole immaterial domain over here. Yeah, we don't want to hear about that. Just tell us, like, if we can use this for medicine and sell it. It's probably sell it. Like, it's probably why. And it's like, oh, well, can we sell this for therapeutic use? But anyway, that's why I really like philosophers like Peter Schustedt H., who's a great philosopher, wrote a great book called Pneumonics. Check it out. It's about the psychedelic experience, but from a philosophical standpoint. And again, I don't want to say that the therapeutic uses aren't important. They are. But it's just funny how this huge aspect of it is ignored. So the percentage of participants who identified as believers, for example, in an ultimate reality, a higher power, and or God. Now, keep in mind, these are all very, very different things. Belief in an ultimate reality or a higher power or God. So when we say God, this doesn't necessarily mean a guy in the clouds with a beard. Remember, we're coming at using words from a scientific standpoint with people who probably have no idea. Well, okay. Look. I want to say something real quick. Where is this report? This is coming from I forget where it is. The Johns Hopkins Center for Psychedelic and Consciousness Research. So it's very possible that I could be wrong about this person's quote and their intentions. Perhaps these people are extremely interested in the philosophical implications of psychedelics. They might be fantastic people and people who really get it. What I'm criticizing is the scientific community at large that doesn't. So I could have taken that sentence out of context, and I likely did, but maybe I didn't. I have no idea. But it still applies to the scientific community at large. I just want to point that out because this center and whatever, they might be great people and really get it, or they might not. I don't know. But I'm not necessarily criticizing them. I'm talking about the scientific community as a whole that has this very misunderstanding of psychedelics, what they are and how they work and what they can accomplish. So anyway, the percentage of participants who identified as believers, that is, in an ultimate reality, a higher power and or God, increased from 29% before the psychedelic experience to 59% after the psychedelic experience. That is very significant, going from 29% to 59%. And remember, that doesn't mean that they're believing in God like Jesus or something like that. We're talking about an ultimate reality or just the idea of a higher power. So that very well in the psychedelic experience is related to, the holistic interconnectivity of all reality and all existence. Not a guy in the clouds with a beard that's, just intent on sending you to hell if you piss him off. No, we're talking about like belief in an ultimate reality. Went from 29% to 59% after just one experience. At both the factor and individual item level, higher ratings of mystical experience were associated with greater changes in belief. Belief changes assessed after the experience, on average 8 years later, remained largely unchanged at the time of the survey, meaning that even after 8 years, that these beliefs basically didn't change. After some years, they didn't go, oh, you know what? That experience I had, that was great. I was just high, and yeah, after a year or two, I didn't believe that anymore. No, they're saying that these were persistent changes. Now, again, that's not to say that sometimes you really do go, oh wow, I was just high. That's a crazy belief. Sometimes you do. Just like sometimes you have crazy dreams. You're in the realm of intuitive, meaning, purposeful, holistic, artistic, symbolic immersion. So there's going to be some wild stuff in there. But the magnitude of belief changes is strongly associated with mystical experience ratings, which are assessed without reference to supernatural beliefs. So again, this is interesting. They're saying that the magnitude of belief changes is strongly associated with mystical experience ratings, not reference to supernatural beliefs. Again, I don't know the details. I'd want to know how they define these things specifically, but that's very interesting. So let's see. Oliver Lee McCabe III, PhD professor in neuropsychopharmacology of consciousness at the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine, and blah, 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 blah. He's a very important person, said, major features of such experiences include a sense of connectedness, preciousness, and validity. And that's so cool. These features may account for changes in beliefs such as an increase in a sense of purpose and meaning of life, and that the universe is conscious. Psychedelics are powerful, important tools. They're not the be-all and end-all, and people can use them as crutches, and they're not for everyone. But they are important. The researchers say that future studies at the center will focus on empirical psychedelic research on secular spirituality and well-being. Very interesting. So, I want to read this point again, real quick. Major features. You know what? Actually, I want to tell you my experience first. And then I want to go over this one more time, because in here is really the crux of why the psychedelic experience is so important. So, just to talk about psychedelics as a tool, I went through many different beliefs belief system changes. My changes in what I believe about reality has been a dialectical journey. And how that dialectical journey, remember, one has to be aware of one's limitations. Always be aware, be conscious, be smart. Don't just believe stuff that people say. Don't take stuff on dogma. Always analyze, always look. Don't just affirm the things that make you feel good or work for you. Look at the stuff that makes you uncomfortable. Look at the stuff that feels like errors or you could be wrong. Examine those things. That's how you're going to evolve. Because I was raised in a strict Christian household. If I just read the Bible and prayed every day and didn't look at the things that didn't make sense, I would have never stepped away from Christianity. But I looked and was like, hey, there is a lot in here that doesn't add up. I examined them, realized that there was a problem, and I stepped away from that. Now, I stepped away from that and I moved towards materialistic atheistic science. Now, I never would have categorized myself as a scientific materialist or an atheist. I would have categorized myself as an agnostic. So my at that time in my life, my general belief was that reality is most likely only material. But again, I'm not going to be dogmatic about it. I'm going to be open-minded. So I was not saying, oh yes, this is certainly 100% absolutely true. It was like, okay, well, based on what I have seen, what I've studied, what I know, what I've learned, it seems as though religion is a bunch of bullshit and that materialist science, that matter is the only thing that exists, that is what is likely true. Not sure, but very likely that is what is true. And that's what I believed. Then I was experimenting with psychedelics. Really, it's just marijuana in the beginning. And when I started doing marijuana, I had these experiences that showed to me clearly that there was more to reality than matter. Because something like drinking alcohol and getting drunk, that makes sense in the materialist paradigm. Because you're just inebriated. You can't function as well. You're stumbling over things. You're just messing with the brain. And so it makes sense that you would be in a lower state. However, when you do THC, it's not. You're having these amazing experiences, these amazing ideas. You're entering into experiences of something higher, not of something lower. And this clearly showed me that there is more to reality than matter. Science and materialism, the materialist science, the paradigm of materialism, there is only matter and that's it, cannot account for the psychedelic experience, cannot account for it. And so I realized that limitation of materialism, see, that was again, looking for limitations, seeing that limitation. Materialism can't do this. Did I just sweep it under the rug and go, oh no, I'm just going to keep watching Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens and ignore this part of it because it makes me uncomfortable? No, so there's a problem here. There's an error here. I'm going to let go of these beliefs and realize there's more to reality. So that's when I stepped into a dualistic understanding of reality, where I believed that reality was both matter and mind. So very Cartesian in that aspect, that, okay, there's a material domain, but there's also this incredible immaterial domain that psychedelics allow us to get a glimpse of. But then what happens there? Now, first of all, I want to show first before I talk more about that, my point here is look at the power of psychedelics. Do you see the power? These now, of course, this is important because I, after the fact, understood and integrated it. I examined the experience I had. I studied it, examined it, integrated it, and went, hey, this does not comport with the materialist perspective. The materialist perspective cannot explain this. There must be more to reality. You see, I'm examining it. I'm not just having an experience and then going, wow, that was cool, man. Hey, let's go to the movies. Do people still go to the movies? I haven't been to the movies. Is that a thing? I haven't been to the movies in years. Anyway, so do you see where psychedelic experience are tools? They're not just automatically going to make you enlightened. They're tools. You have to do the hard work of understanding integration and examination, metacognition, concept networking, all that. You got to do all that yourself. If you don't, you're just going to be like, whoa, that was trippy, man. Let's go get some cake. If you just go get cake and you don't think about it, integrate it and understand it, it's not going to be helpful. So my first point is, do you see the power that psychedelics have as tools, as liberating devices? And Terence McKenna said that psychedelics are illegal not because a loving government is afraid that you're going to jump out of a third-story window, but because they dissolve opinion structures and show you that everything that you believed is wrong. Now, I don't think that psychedelics automatically dissolve opinion structures. I think they give you an experience that can result in the dissolving of opinion structures if you examine them and understand them and integrate them. And I think Terence would most likely agree with that. I don't know, maybe. I like Terence McKenna a lot, by the way. I don't agree with everything he says, but very intelligent individual, fantastic person. I like Terence a lot. So, my first point is, do you see how they are wildly powerful tools that can liberate one if they are understood and integrated, and if you are always on the lookout for examining limitations? So that's the first really important part. Now, so I was in this dualistic belief system where I believed that there was both mind and matter, because that was the only thing that could account for materialism. Just matter cannot account for psychedelic experience. Can. But if reality is Cartesian or dual, or there's mind and matter, that can account for the psychedelic experience. But did I just sit there and stay there? No, I started examining that mindset and saying, are there any problems here? Is there anything wrong with this? Like, is this possible? Like, keep searching and searching and searching. And of course, I started studying philosophy, esoterica, and a lot of mystical thought as well. I started studying all these things, but specifically philosophy, coming across philosophy like the philosophy of Descartes, and understanding that Cartesian dualism, the idea that mind and matter are separate, that there's a problem there. Because if mind and matter are separate, logically and rationally, if they're completely separate in every way, there's no way for them to interact. There's no way for them to be causally interactive. If mind and matter are truly separate and independent structures with nothing in common whatsoever, then it is a logical impossibility for them to have a causal interaction. To put it really simply to understand this, imagine like a ghost trying to drive a car. It would just keep going through the steering wheel because it wouldn't interact with it. In a really simplistic way, that's sort of the problem of Cartesian dualism. If mind and matter are completely separate, there's no causal interaction, so the mind wouldn't be able to interact with the brain to help the body function or to facilitate the function of the body. So there's a problem there, limitation. So keep studying, but the idea of then idealism, which is that there is only mind. Mind is all that exists, and that matter is just a experience of mind in Hegelian terms that has othered itself, or that has solidified itself, or has a philosopher once said that Hegel's a great philosopher who's an absolute idealist, absolute idealism, said that matter was jellied thought. And that's kind of a funny observation. So yeah, if you imagine like just water and then clumps of it becoming like jello and that being matter, I think what's a more helpful metaphor is water and ice. If you imagine water as being mind and then pieces of ice as being matter, as just a transformation of water. So you can have ice arise from water and then the ice go back to water. So it's ultimately a transformation of the same substance. So the idea, idealism, the word idea is in there, so you can remember it has to do with mind, idea, idealism, mind. The stance of philosophical idealism is that all is mind, and matter is just mind that has been transformed into something that we experience as matter. Like when you go to sleep and dream, you experience a solid material world of sights, sounds, and tastes, and touches, and colors, and the whole world but it's just a transformation of your mental processes. Likewise, in idealism, it's a very similar thing. That reality is just a transformation of material mental processes. So ultimately, everything is mind, all mind, no matter. Matter is just a transformation of mind. And that solves the problem of, it accounts for the psychedelic experience. Not only accounts for the psychedelic experience, but in addition to accounting for the psychedelic experience, doesn't have the problem of Cartesian dualism or the interaction problem. And so that, to that point, is to show why it's important to always be aware of your limitations. Look for that which makes you uncomfortable. Look for that which might be wrong. Look for errors. Look for flaws. If at any of those times I just stayed comfortable in my little field and never explored, never looked to find any bear, if I just stayed in there, I would have been a Christian my whole life. Or if I just went one step over, I'd be a materialist my whole life. Or if I just went one step over, I'd be a dualist my whole life. It's that examining, and most people don't do that. Or they just take one step. And I see that a lot, especially people who have a religious background and they leave religion. They'll leave religion and they'll plop into atheism. Or they'll plop into Satanism. Or they'll plop into paganism. And then they'll just stay there and miss out on all this other growth that they could have had. Now, I'm not shitting on any of these things in my hand here that I am holding, apparently. Paganism, Satanism, atheism, all that. They are important dialectical steps in moving away from religion. So if any of you are those things, I'm not trying to belittle you or anything like that at all. I'm just saying that I see it all the time when there's this whole dialectical journey, but people get stuck. They just move one step over and don't look for the problems in there. And there's all this growth they could have done. They just got comfortable. That belief that they plopped on over, it solved the problems of this belief structure. But they never found the errors in this belief structure and acknowledged them and realized they had to move over to another higher understanding of reality. And this process is very Hegelian of the dialectical development of consciousness. Hegel's book, The Phenomenology of Spirit, is all about the development of consciousness, starting at the very most basic state of consciousness. And this basic state of consciousness constantly finds a problem in the way it thinks about the world, and then so comes to a new and higher belief, but then finds a problem in that way of thinking, and then goes to an even higher form of belief. And this process just keeps continuing and continuing of new consciousness, but finding a problem with it, then having a higher state, but then finding a problem with that one, and then a higher state again and again and again until absolute consciousness is reached, or essentially God consciousness. So you start at just bare awareness and travel all the way to God consciousness through this dialectical process of understanding the errors in your way of thinking. And psychedelics can be very, 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 very useful tools, very powerful tools in this process. But you see, not only are there powerful tools in this process, but it's not a magic pill that's just going to make everyone automatically move to a higher consciousness. They have to do the work of examining their belief structures and moving forward and developing. So important. What I want to move to here, and this is key. So the Oliver Lee McCabe, the PhD professor, and founding director of the Psychedelic and Consciousness Research, said, major features of such experiences, psychedelic experiences, so the major feature of psychedelic experiences include a sense of connectedness, preciousness, and validity. And that's so cool. And these features may account for changes in beliefs, such as an increase in sense of purpose and meaning of life, and that the universe is conscious. Now that's just cool by itself. But why is this so cool? Because these are the key areas that are not only lacking in our world, but causing this world division and destruction. We have the problems that we have in our life because This world does not give us a sense of connectedness. We feel disconnected. So many problems arise from disconnection, whether that's a disconnection from self or disconnection from others. And psychedelics can facilitate a connection to self and others. We have so much problem because of not having connectedness. Preciousness and validity, realizing the validity of others and the importance of life, the preciousness of life, the preciousness of others, the validity of others. A sense of purpose and meaning in life. The world at large today, we have no sense of meaning. We have no sense of purpose in this capitalistic world that says, oh, you're nothing but a consumer. That's all you are good for, is to make products and buy products. You are a number. How do you affect the bottom line? That's all you're good for. You're become a product. And then materialist science that says matter is all that exists. You're worthless. You're just a tiny, insignificant speck in the universe that doesn't matter. And when you die, that's it. You're gone. So who the fuck cares? We are greatly lacking in purpose and meaning. And when you realize that you are eternal and are an integral part, the very center, you are the center, the heart, the soul of existence. You're not a meaningless speck of nothing. You are that which everything depends upon. So, do you see how powerful? Again, this is not the magic solution to everything. We can't just like put LSD in the drinking water and everything's going to be fine. Would probably help though. Don't do that. I'm not saying to do that. Don't do that. Don't do anything illegal. Don't do anything dangerous. Okay. But do you see how they are such powerful tools for the things that could be lacking, that are lacking, not could be lacking, but are lacking. And these will help solve our problems in the world. Because I'll tell you, when, doing, let's see, LSD, for example, I believe that it is possible that LSD could be giving us a glimpse into the development of a new sense. Because, for example, when one does LSD, at least my experience on it, is that you visually see and feel the connectedness of everything. You see it. You see the relations in the form of an overlaying grid. So on LSD, I can see the connectedness of everything, like visually see it, the connectedness of everything in the room, and feel it as well. It's not just a feeling, and it's not just a visual representation. It is both. It is both a feeling and a seeing visually. Not just, I want to make that clear, because some people just think it's one or the other. Usually, no, it's both. And so imagine if this sense were developed in humanity, when we would see and meet other people, we would automatically not only visually see our connectedness with that person, but feel that connectedness with that person. And when you do that, are you going to get into fights? Are you going to go to wars? Are you going to try and nuke the world? Are you going to? No, because that would be stupid, because it would be like nuking yourself. It would be like getting into a fight with yourself. When you have that visual experience as well as that feeling, and that resolves all the issues that we have. And I think it's very possible that could be the development of a new human sense. Or if it doesn't happen naturally, something that we can develop technologically as we build or augment new avatars. We can lift that particular portion of the filter of the brain to allow the flooding in of a visual sense of seeing and feeling a connectedness. And then you don't have to worry about the idea of war and bloodshed and hatred would just be absurd. It would be crazy. It would be as crazy as like taking a hammer and just banging your hand. It's like, why the fuck would you do that? Imagine aliens that have developed this sense and feeling watching us on Earth, just basically self-mutilating ourselves. It's ridiculous. And so we can come to this understanding philosophically, but to see it and feel it is certainly another thing entirely. So a couple things I want to say real quick here, though. Again, to don't do anything dangerous, don't do anything illegal, and don't feel pressured, okay? I know I'm really talking up psychedelics, but don't feel pressured because they're not necessary. You don't have to do them. And not only do you not have to do them, there's so much more that needs to be done as well. Psychedelics are just one component of an option in phenomenological experience. There are there's things like meditation, there's lucid dream states, and you could even facilitate other. I'll get into it later. I don't want to get into there. You don't have to do psychedelics. Okay, I just want to make that clear. And there's also metacognition and concept networking that has to be included to reach that higher level of awareness. So I just want to make that clear. Don't feel pressured, or don't feel bad if you can't do them, or don't feel like just don't. Okay, it's okay. But that being said, though, they are extremely powerful tools, and it can facilitate as well the development of a higher awareness with regard to what we need. So, for example, how humanity developed self-awareness was largely dependent upon social structure. So humanity likely developed self-awareness through very important social structures, like, let's say, being given a name. So when you're being given a name, you receive a tag or a marker that marks you off, demarcates you, individualizes you, and separates you from the rest of reality. Oh, I am Tom, I am not Martha. So a name helps develop that sense of individuality and self-awareness. Not only that, but hierarchy also helps carve that out in a social structure as, oh, this person I have to take orders from. It's not just my will alone. I have to obey this person, or that person takes my orders. And now I'm not getting into a debate on what is good or bad with regard to hierarchy, but I'm just talking about what developed and how that helped carve out a sense of, oh, there is an other than me. There is a me, there is something that is not me. And hierarchy helps that, develop that at least. I'm not getting into the ethics of hierarchy here, but I'm just saying what it helps develop, as well as language, because language is a flow of information that helps facilitate all this, and it helps demarcate everything. Oh, that is a cup, that is a tree, that is, Bill, and whatever. You're manipulating concepts. And so these social structures of language and hierarchy and being named, having a name, helps develop self-awareness. Self-awareness must develop by developing an ego and an analog I. And an ego and an analog I, they're fancy words. They are just structures of the mind that let you know that you are a you. Your ego is the sense of you, the sense of self. The analog I is that version of yourself that you can put in like future scenarios. When you imagine what you're going to do next week, like let's say you want to quit your job and you're going to imagine yourself quitting your job. You're using that kind of like dummy version of you. You're putting it in that scenario, and you can move it around, whether it's in the future or the past, and like play out simulated scenarios. That's your analog I. You can do that. It was Julian James, who I think coined analog I. Pretty damn sure. And so the development of higher awareness requires the development of an analog all and an absolute ego. And the analog all is it's the opposite of the analog I. It's not a simulated version of you. It's an understanding and development of a sense of the connectedness of all reality. So every time you think about yourself, you think about that model, that version of you that you've created. When someone talks about the universe, it would be thinking about the entirety connected structure of all that we are and how we all relate to each other. Humanity has not developed that. They don't understand that exists. Just like, most animals haven't developed the human capacity of an analog I, right? They haven't developed a simulated version of themselves that they can place into the future when they want to imagine themselves 5 years from now when they decide to dig up the bone in their backyard. They can't do that. So likewise, humanity hasn't developed the absolute, the analog all, where in the analog all, it allows us to have the entire structure of reality and our interconnectedness being understood in a general degree, not in a detailed degree, in a general degree, at least enough to go like, oh, hey, maybe we shouldn't kill each other and hate each other. And that's a huge reason why we have so much hatred in the world. And psychedelics can be very, very, very powerful tools that are helpful for that development. and could, again, even potentially be, when we start to understand the brain and develop technologies for the augmentation of our avatars, the facilitation and development of a new sense where, you don't have to go through years of philosophical training or whatever to understand this. It is just seen and shown, and you just, as much as you can see, your phone in front of your face, or the apple that you're holding, you'll be able to see the interconnectedness of yourself and all that is around you. And there's just so much more that I could talk about there, with development of like seeing different frequencies and, different colors demarcating different frequencies with regard to different people's personalities and perhaps compatibility. There's so much interesting that could be shown between like compatibility being reflected in something that one could sense and see and visually, whether it be because of different colors or different shapes or different patterns. There's so much I could talk about there, but it's that development of that new sense. But that's kind of getting off topic. It's just something that I think is very cool, and something that should be worked on in the future. And the important thing, though, the psychedelics are powerful tools, and I'm really talking them up. But remember, in the end, though, they are just tools, and if you don't use them right, they're useless, or they can become a crutch. When people go, oh, you know what? I'm not going to study philosophy. I'm not going to do really a lot of heavy thinking. I'm just going to take a tab. Now it's a crutch. Now it's blocking your growth, because you're not doing the hard work of understanding and integration and doing the hard. No, you're just popping a pill. That's not going to help. That's going to block your growth if you're using it as a crutch. So there are dangers, and there are things that one needs to be cautious of, and one should not use it as a crutch. And I'll say it one last time. Don't do anything dangerous. Don't do anything illegal, and don't feel pressured. Having said that, these are very powerful tools and should be taken very seriously to see how they could be used for the development of humanity and consciousness and connectivity and a new world. Hey, if you like my work, hit like and subscribe. I have a lot more videos on psychedelics and the unity of reality and a lot more. Check it out. My channel is all about spreading consciousness, spreading awareness. So if you like what I do, if you like my videos, consider supporting on Patreon. Helps out a lot. It's how I'm able to do my work and have a roof over my head. So check it out. You get access to our weekly secret live streams. Our secret live stream this week is the Well to Hell, Drilling into Hell. It's going to be a fun stream. You get access to our hidden Discord server, the Citadel, and all of that stuff. I want to give a big shout out to everyone who does support over on Patreon, especially Philanthropist, Zach, Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Michael, Angela, Maria, Top of the World, Ethan, DB, and Joel. Thank you all, and everyone else. Thank you all so much. And if you want to help out as well, you can hit the join button right below this YouTube video on YouTube. Thank you.